All right, so in our last video, we looked at how to get data from our movie database API, and then we displayed that data onto our page. But let's get a little bit more creative now. All right, so I'm just going to comment this out. And all right, here's where I'm thinking of going with this. So let's create some elements that is going to be populated with our data. So I can foresee on your homework assignment, for example, that you might be looping through an array and replicating what I'm going to be doing here with just one of the elements in the array. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create an h1 tag. I'm going to give it a variable of h1, and I'm going to do document create element, and I'm going to create a h1 tag. Okay, so maybe not the best variable name, but it gives us the idea that I'm creating an h1 element. And so then when I create the h1 element, now I have access to that variable, and I can do inner that that h1 element that I'm creating. I'm going to do an inner HTML, and I'm going to have that equal to the, I'm going to actually use the title instead of overview, but we'll put, I think it was called, oh, what was it called? It was called, well, I'm going to have to go look it up again. In fact, I don't remember the name of the property, so I'll come back to inspect element, and let's see if I can pull it out of my network here. So I'm going to refresh so I can see the page, click on the API, go to response, and then I should be able to see it in here. I don't remember the name of the, so I'm drilling down to results of 0, and then I'm going to scroll down to its original title. That's what I'm looking for because I want to print out the title of the movie. All right, so not overview, but original. I didn't remember that title. It's been a whole 10 minutes since I've done the last video. All right, okay, so now that I have that, let's see, is there anything else I might need? Yes, I think as we demonstrated down here, I might need an ID or a class to make that unique. So I'm going to do both just as a demonstration. So I'm going to do class name equals, and you might use an index here, for example, if you were looping through an array, but I'm just going to hard code in the value 3 for the moment since I'm not looping through the array. I can also do it h1 ID equals 3. That way I have those handy for whatever reason. And now I need to append those to some kind of a parent. So I think what I'll do is, I'll do it here. So I'm going to create a div with an ID of movie. Okay, and I'm going to append that to, as a child, I'm going to append my h1 element that I just created. It's going to become a child of movie. And so using jQuery, it's very easy to get a hold of that element. It is an ID of movie, and then I can append the h1 element. All right, so that should be all I need to do that. So now let's see what happens. So I can see that Joker got pulled over, and for speeding, oh wait, no, got pulled over from the API. And then if I check my console, my inspector, I'm just going to double check that I can see the DOM element was created. So I have div ID equals movie, h1 ID equals 3, and class equals 3. Okay, fantastic. Well, all's looking good so far with one exception. And that is, earlier in another video, we created this h1 click event. And so isn't this an h1? It is an h1. And remember when we clicked on like Donatello, when we just hard coded in Donatello, and I clicked on h1, then we saw the h1 click event take effect, right? That got fired. But this is an h1 event, and when I click on Joker, nothing's happening. And so the reasoning for that is the fact that when the DOM was loaded, there was some h1s that were in place, and click events were attached to those h1s. But when I appended a new h1 element, it doesn't just automatically get associated with the h1. And in other words, the click events have all been handed out to all of the existing h1s at the time that the DOM was created. At the time the DOM was created, these h1s didn't exist. They came after the fact. Therefore, they didn't also just get stuck to this click event. We have to add a new click event to the new H1s. And so what I'm going to do then is we're going to use this thing called delegate. So I'm going to again do the $, which indicates jQuery. And then I'm going to get to the document and I'm going to add this word delegate. So delegate gives me the ability to, on this H1, any new H1 tag, so it's like doing this again on an onload, except we're doing it again now that we've created some new elements. So on that H1, I want to add a click event. And then in here, I'm going to create the function and do exactly what we did before, where I took that event. In fact, I could just copy and paste all of this code over. Copy and paste, and then we have open and closing curly brace, and then I can do this. Now, make sure I have, but this time, let's see, I think I'm using, did I use a class or I could do it either way, I suppose. So, let's see, my H1 is an ID or a class, so I can use ID or class. So if you want to do the period or the $, I have both the class and the ID associated with that, so either should work. And I'm going to make this one smaller, so I'm going to use 1,000 milliseconds, so 1 second instead, just so I can see that working. And so now what you're going to find is now that when I click on the Joker, it's working. See how it worked a second? But the Donatello is still taking the 3-second one. And the Leo is also taking the 3-second one. So the original H1 events are still happening, but the new ones are getting the new toggle event. So in fact, let's see, let's just do this just for giggles and sakes. So if I hit Donatello now, that should be the 1,000. This one should also be the 1,000. And then that one is also. So anyway, so now I've just assigned, now that I've created some new elements, we're reassigning the click event.